Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Language Facilitation Q&A. My name is Marcy Melzer, and I am an intuitive language facilitation consultant. And what that means is that I equip and I empower parents to learn how to facilitate language for their kids to become language facilitators and teach their children how to use natural verbal speech so they can share all of their wisdom with the world, because we're on this planet learning from the kids and we've got to get all of these late talkers talking. And I have learned over 30 years of practice as a speech therapist. I learned after leaving the system and training parents that all over the world, that they have learned to teach their kids how to talk naturally by themselves by doing language facilitation strategies. So on these Q&A sessions every week, I come on as a service to the community of parents of late talking children. I'll do my best to provide you with some strategies and guidance to get you started on your language facilitation journey. And I have many free resources for families to access to try strategies. And you can access them on my website, wavesofcommunication.com. There's a free class for parents there. You can also access more than 200 videos on my YouTube channel. And if you are in my independent study program, which doesn't have any access time to work with me, these Q&A sessions are a wonderful opportunity to get answers to your questions. So welcome to all of you who are watching on the replay, because you will also be able to get some information as I coach other people and answer other questions for other parents. And if you are interested in getting your own questions answered, every Thursday I am here live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm answering questions. And I'm going to dig in. I see there's some popping in. Aparna is here. Aparna is one of my regular followers, and she says, "Hi, Marcy. How are you doing?" I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. You have a question about how to reduce echolalia. And if we ask the question to my 5-year-old boy, he repeats the questions. Example, if anybody asks a question like, "How are you doing?" he repeats the question. Okay, so Aparna, the stopping, the swapping, the prompting challenge identified clearly that asking questions like "How are you?" is a prompt, because that's how we prompt. Even here in the United States, that's what people say, and they don't really often ask people how they are. Usually the response is fine, and they get on to the real topic of the conversation. So and the other thing is, most people can tell how a child is feeling by looking at them. Because kids, especially nonverbal kids, communicate their feelings non-verbally. So if you obviously see that your child is upset, instead of asking your child, "How are you feeling?" then you need to tell your child how they are feeling. You always answer the question. If you find yourself asking a question because it pops out spontaneously because you're in the habit of doing that, you just answer the question for you. You say, "Child, how are you feeling?" Oops, ask that question and begin. "I can see you are feeling sad." And then you have to work with your child to try to explain why they're sad or happy or whatever you obviously are watching them do. If you are the mama, you always know how your child feels kind of by looking at them, right? You can pretty much tell, certainly generally. And if you just ask your child, "How are you feeling?" which is a pretty general kind of question, it's a non-question and qualifies as a prompt. So Aparna, please, I implore you, go back and watch the videos. If you scroll through my Waves of Communication now for the past week, there are 3 or 4 or 5 different posts and videos that talk about the challenge, talk about why it's important to stop this prompting, because the reason your child is repeating the question is because you have prompted your child to imitate words. You've said many times, or they have heard many times, "Say this." from you, followed by the phrase that you want them to say. And maybe you stopped saying, say this, but you non-verbally requested your child imitate the word by holding the object and expecting your child to say it before you give them the object. That is a prompt to get your child to say the word. If they don't do it when you don't say something, then you actually ask a question or ask them to say it. These are the prompts that I'm talking about with the stopping, the swapping, the prompting challenge. I say stopping because you need to stop it, but you need to watch those videos so you learn what to do instead, because you can't just stop one teaching method cold turkey without doing something else. And you need to incorporate the follow-up language facilitation strategies that go with this challenge. Just stopping one thing isn't going to help. You have to replace with something else so that you facilitate it without freaking out yourself and your child, and you have a smooth process through it. So the answer to your question, Aparna, is it's not echolalia when your child just imitates you. It's habit. It's habit that they have learned from being prompted to imitate words. Echolalia is when your child spontaneously says something without a prompt, but it's not necessarily related to actually what they mean by it. They use the wrong words. For example, if your child wants to ask you for something and they say, do you want a ice cream, when they are requesting an ice cream, that do you want ice cream is just a memorized phrase that they heard you say that they are pulling out of their file cabinet as a behavior to get you to give them that thing. It's just like a gimme. It's just like a grab. You've taught them to say words instead of grabbing it themselves. But it's equally a behavior. It's not actual real words. That's echolalia. That's how naturally, when we're learning new words, we imitate them ourselves just to practice, okay? So if a child is saying the wrong words to you in response to a prompt, they're just imitating the words that you're saying because they don't know what to say. That's the reason it's happening. And the way you stop it is by facilitating language during those requests, those nonverbal things, instead of prompting a speech behavior. That's how you swap it. Here is your question. She says, my son with mild autism, 6 years old, very rare, he says certain words and always babbling and humming, but never on demand. Is it true after 6 years, difficult to get speech 100% for autism kids? Please answer me. Thanks in advance. So yeah, the answer is, will a child after 6 years old be able to develop natural conversational spoken language? The answer is yes, and I have proven it with families in my program. I have many families in my program who have children who are older than 6, 7, 8, and 10 years old, and I just signed up a new family of a girl who is 12 and a half. And I have every intention to coach these parents to get their kids to use natural conversational speech. Every single one of these kids, including the 12-and-a-half-year-old, even after just a couple of days, is already showing signs of progression towards natural verbal speech because her parents, and like all of these parents, are doing natural language facilitation for the first time with their kids. They've gotten off of their path as a parent language facilitator, and they've turned themselves into a speech therapist, and they're trying to prompt and drag and bribe and whatever their kids to say words like speech therapists do, instead of teaching them to communicate naturally. So if your child is older than 2 or 3 years old and they're not talking yet, you must still continue. First of all, you have to figure out why they're not talking, and that's a whole process in itself. But you also have to find out what's blocking them from moving forward, what's keeping them stuck in their nonverbal communication patterns. Because even once a child is 100% perfectly healthy, they can be nonverbal forever if they remain stuck in nonverbal communication. Because spoken language, learning to speak your first spoken language, is still a late talking child's second language. Their first language is their nonverbal communication system that they've made up. If your child has got to be 6 years old or older, they've made it through life communicating somehow without words. They've made up their own system. They understand nonverbally. They communicate nonverbally. Some of them are very, very good at it, especially by 6 years old. And this is the age usually where people decide, oh, I guess the child's never going to talk. And then they spend all their effort training them in more advanced nonverbal communication systems like the iPad, the tablet-based systems, or the rapid prompting method, or some more advanced, because in these systems you can train a child to use more connected language because as they get older, they have need for this language. So what happens is parents just quit. They've actually quit doing natural language facilitation back when their kids were 2, especially if you start with these programs, these nonverbal systems, and your child's not even 2 years old and you're picture exchanging instead of teaching natural talking. You're retraining your child's brain away from how they were wired to learn language from their moms and dads. You're training them to learn language by memorization. That's what all of that is. It's memorize word by word by word by word and make your mouth say it and do the behavior over and over again and hope that it turns into some kind of complex, meaningful language. And it doesn't. It never can. It never can. Because in order to learn how natural language works, you have to hear natural language and practice natural language in natural language environments. You must. You can't learn it otherwise. And you can know this if you ever tried to learn a second spoken language. If you grew up speaking one language and then you had to go live somewhere where people were speaking another language, you know how this goes. You can't learn that language by going to school and memorizing conjugated verbs and learning vocabulary. You have to go live there, watch people, listen to people talking in that language. And while they're doing the things that they're doing, you listen to what they're saying and you make it connect in your head. That's how you learn spoken language. That's how children learn their first spoken language. And late talkers just haven't learned their first one yet because no one has trained them to learn language the way spoken language is learned. Your child's first language, they can learn multiple languages once they learn the first spoken one. But until your child is speaking, teaching multiple languages is going to be tricky because they're just going to memorize things in both languages. They're not learning either language as a spoken language. They're just learning individual things. So here's the deal. A lot of people think that after 6 years old, it's harder to learn language, spoken language, and it is. Is it impossible? No. Can you do it? Yes, because kids are wired to do it. You just have a lot of barriers. The reason that kids don't do it is because by 6 years old, their mindset has changed to be a nonverbal communicator. And all the scientists that train kids to try to talk the way that they've been doing, and those things that work spoken language don't work, that's why they think kids can't do it, but they're wrong because parents are proving it. Those things that you read that say kids can't learn spoken language after 6 years old only mean kids can't learn spoken language after 6 years old by memorization. Because trust me, I know as you get older, it's harder to memorize. I'm 53 and I can hardly memorize anything anymore. I got to write everything down. I use GPS. I can't even use a map anymore. It's terrible. So this is what happens, right? As kids get older, memorization becomes harder. And so learning language in the spoken language way that speech therapists teach language becomes harder. And that's why they can't do it. But they can absolutely learn spoken language when their parents facilitate language naturally during their everyday situations, like learning a foreign language, because you can learn a foreign language when you're way older than 6. I learned to speak Spanish when I learned to speak German in high school and college, and I learned to speak Spanish when I was in my 50s, 40s, long ago. So that's the thing. Natural spoken language can be learned at every age if it is taught in the correct way. Okay, so Tanya's here. Hi, Tanya. Nice to see you. I think I've seen you again. 4 weeks ago, no prompting. Woo! Good for you. Now he is spontaneously asking for things. That's Vab. But I don't always understand his speech. Right. What should I do? Do I let him say it his way, or do I say what I think he is saying? He is 11. All right. So Tanya, when your child is saying words on their own spontaneously and you don't understand them at all, the first strategy is you have to tell them that you don't understand them, so they try a little harder to use their better talking. That's the first thing, because kids will try harder when they know you don't understand them. They won't try harder just because you tell them to try harder. They'll try harder to explain things because it's important for them to communicate their message. So if they come to you trying to communicate something, anything, what they want, their idea, that they think the dog is cool, whatever, they're trying to get this message to you. And anybody who is a talker, which your boy is now, if somebody goes, wait, I didn't understand you, they're gonna try harder. They're gonna slow down a little, whatever. And so that's how you do it. And as soon as your child, the second strategy is, if your child says something that you do understand but is wrong, the method that you do is called recasting. So you just say back to your child in context what they said, only the right way. So let's say your child calls it paschetti instead of spaghetti, and they go, this paschetti is good, Mom, or whatever they said. And you say, right, that's spaghetti is really yummy. Because what happens when kids goof up when they learn natural language is because they didn't quite hear it right the first time. Maybe it came at them too fast. Maybe they were a little distracted. Maybe they need to hear it a few more times. It's just like when you watch a YouTube video to learn how to knit something. You learn step 1 and step 2, but if they went too fast, you need to have a rewind. So in your child's first language that's coming out, it's not necessarily going to be clear. And the way you get them to clear it up is by getting them to try a little harder, and to recast and tell them, show them, have them look at your face a lot, how the words look. All right, Budapest says, when my son is finished eating, he always says the phrase, are you done? This is the phrase I usually say to ask him if he is done eating. How can I help him understand that he's supposed to say, I am done eating? Right, so the first problem with that is he is supposed to say. Because if you are teaching your child to talk by having them memorize phrases that they use at the right time, that's that memorization kind of teaching that I was talking about, okay? The first advice I have to you, Buddha, I have to try to say your name, Bhupinder, is eliminate your expectation for your child to say, I am done. If there is no food left on the plate, then your child is obviously done. Unless you're offering them more food, and then you wouldn't ask them if they're done, you would ask them if they want more food, right? So if there is still food on your child's plate and they have stopped eating, then you say, I see you have stopped eating. Are you all done? And then your child is going to give you the yes or no answer. Because if you and I were having dinner together and there was still food on my plate and you wanted to pick it up, you would ask me, are you all done? And I would say yes or no. I wouldn't say, I am done eating. That's not a natural response. That is a prompted behavior that you're teaching your child, right? And I might, that are you done eating is a true yes or no question if in fact you don't know that your child is done eating. Like I said, if the plate is empty, then your child is obviously done eating, and then you state that obvious. You are done eating. I am taking your plate. That is language facilitation. All right, Daman says, hi, Marcy, nice to see you. Nice to see you too. Thank you for joining me today. I need to ask, is oral motor massages necessary for my 7-year-old? Will it help him to speak? He currently babbles only papa, papa. Okay, so Daman, oral motor massage is not going to help your child speak. So this is going to do the same as if you did everyday massage on your back or your leg or your foot or whatever. It's going to from the outside in mush up the muscles. It's not going to tell your child's mouth where to go when they're talking. You can't do that from the outside. That's a brain process. How does my brain know to make the difference between a l sound and a k sound and a sound? How does my brain know how to do that? I don't know. It just knows. It's not something that I tell it. Make your mouth go together to make the sound. And because when you make the sound, it's a lot more than my mouth that's going. I have to make my lungs work to push air up. It actually is coming out my nose, the sound. My whole head is resonating. And if I was going to try to teach myself to say the sound by touching my mouth, I wouldn't even learn it. So here is Carrie, who did get on back. Thank you so much. She says, hi, Marcy, my son is 4, and I previously couldn't understand his spontaneous speech well. Stopping the prompting has really encouraged him to speak more clearly. But my question is, he seems to respond well to abstract or complicated ideas. Is this okay? I don't want to be over his head or counterproductive. Oh, Carrie, that is a really, really good question. So the answer is, you talk always about the things that your child loves. And when you, you're better off talking about things that are at or over their head as far as language and language models and language interests, then you are talking about things that are less than. And this is a really, really good point, because when I talk about in the language facilitation strategies that I recommend, when we're swapping out prompting for language facilitation, it's all about modeling the words that the kids want to say. And when I talk about using slow and short phrases, a lot of people think that that means baby talk and talking to kids below their obvious cognitive level. So Carrie, your child is obviously interested in really complex things. And especially as kids get older, they're watching videos, they're learning and memorizing things that there's so much information in their head. And nothing is more frustrating. I'm sure anybody out there watching this can relate to the fact that it is incredibly frustrating when people don't give you credit for knowing what you know, just because you can't articulate it, right? Even when you absolutely know what you mean, but you can't get the words out right. And somebody said they accuse you of not understanding or being able to, have an understanding of that issue. It's just your temporary language flub that, got the communication message wrong. And so nobody likes to be downgraded. So the best thing you can do for your child, Carrie, is model simple language, but use the vocabulary and use the cadence that your child really likes. Like, that is an amazing microbiology discovery. They learned to turn algae into biomedical fuel to power a rocket ship to the moon. Right? That's really careful talking with excitement and big vocabulary that might be at or above your child's level. But I'll tell you what, when you talk like that about the topics that your child is interested in, they're going to listen to you. And they may not hear every single word you say. And that's why you have to have language facilitation opportunities during the things that you do every day, in addition to using careful language facilitation talking while your child is doing the stuff they love. Because both of those things are the circumstances that your children need the language to use every day. They brush their teeth every day. They need to learn the words for that. They get dressed every day. They need to learn the words for that. All the things you do every day, these are the words that your children know, and you can teach them how to learn quickly. The words that are new in their new things, those are the things that they try even harder to learn. And the thing we want most from an older late talker is for them to try, because up until now, they have 100% resisted talking. They've resisted talking to favor their nonverbal communication systems. If you want them to favor talking, it's got to be great. They got to love it. If it isn't fun, it isn't fun. And if fun for your child is studying about microbiology and space, then that's what you got to be talking about. Okay, asking, are you done or are you ready is prompting. Are you done or are you ready? Okay, so I'm not saying that you have to stop prompting everything in your life. You prompt them all day long, all the time to learn new things. Let's say potty training, for example. You may have to prompt your child a lot to go try to use the bathroom. And you may have to do that for a long time until your child gets very good at remembering to go to the bathroom. You have to prompt them to remember that, because remember, that's a behavior. So prompting is the behavior way to teach kids to say words, which isn't talking. So prompting your child to wait, to get ready, to sit in one place, to go to the bathroom, to do all that stuff, that's all behaviors. If you're joining me from wherever you're joining me from, please go ahead and put that in the comments and let me know where you're viewing from. It really is helpful for me to kind of know where people are coming from. And if these lives take off and they start to do pretty well, I might actually think about adding a second live over on YouTube at a different time. So if you're watching this replay on YouTube and you are interested in having a live Q&A, please post in the comments of this video if you would be interested in. All right, Sweetie says, my 3-year-old speaks cartoon language, so nobody understands that. So it happens a lot that kids start to make this talking that sounds like they're cartoons, and it's usually entertainment talking. It's not necessarily communication to you. It is just sort of their own, they're talking for their own pleasure. That is one reason that kids talk spontaneously. They don't necessarily always talk to you. They talk for their own selves. So your child is in the habit of just saying words when prompted, and their cartoon language is what's coming out spontaneously. So you need to start over with all the other things that you're trying to prompt your child to say. Try the stopping the prompting challenge and facilitate more natural language. Your child does not know how to use the words she knows that she's heard you say because she's too heavily focused on the cartoons. It also means that she has had enough exposure to cartoons. It doesn't matter if your child's watching cartoons for 30 minutes a day or 30 hours a week. You know, it only takes as much as they need to memorize those things. If they watch it twice and memorize it, that's still their method of learning. And many kids memorize things quickly. They just like to watch them over and over again. That's just for pleasure. So they learn it very quickly, and then they just watch it for pleasure. Your child who's talking cartoon language, that talking is pleasure talking. You can't stop this cartoon talking, but you need to instead show your child how to use whatever language you are teaching her to communicate the things that she needs from the ground up with language facilitation. All right, Carrie says, I watched you on YouTube and then found Facebook. Recommended by a mom I met at a local jumpy place. Oh, awesome. Carrie, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate you taking the suggestions and doing it yourself, because your kids aren't going to talk without you. And I'm really excited that more and more people are jumping on this language facilitation path to get your kids talking. It's very, very exciting. It's really, really encouraging for me to see how you guys getting your kids talking. So there's Sugi. Hi, Sugi. You're a big follower, and she's a contributor over on my in my language facilitation resources group. By the way, if you're not in my language facilitation resources group, all the best posts, all the resources, whatever I come up with, even from my personal page or other places I find, they always go in the group. The group is where all the resources are. Every single day, I put a new new little blog post with some little tidbit or information about waves of communication. And I'm also on Instagram. I don't talk about it very much, but I do post over there. I have a channel and I do post over there every single day. So you can look up Waves of Communication on Instagram as well if you are an Insta follower. All right, so Maria is here, and Maria says, my nephews had a speech delay. They are 10 and 6. They're still not clear in pronunciation. Is it too late to clear their speech? Maria, it's not too late to clear their speech, but the thing is here, this is a really good question too. When you have children who are talkers, who get to be, especially in this age range, over 6 years old, you have to make the speech clarity improvement your child's, or nephew's in your case, their responsibility. You cannot, it's like teaching a child older than 6 years old, forcing them to play the piano if they don't like playing the piano. Because most kids over 6 years old don't like the articulation speech therapy stuff you gotta do. They go, they repeat words, they say things over and over, they practice, yada, 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 yada. And most of the time, kids over 6 years old do not like that kind of interaction, and all they do is spend their time trying to get out of it. Trying to schmooze their therapist, trying to, just get the reward or do whatever they got to do. They just go like a job to do their thing because they're told. It's just like a child who doesn't want to play the piano, but you're trying to force them to take piano lessons. The second you give them the option to give it up, they do. Right? And that's what will happen with your articulation therapy for a 6 or 10-year-old child, unless you make it really important to that child. You explain to them how important it is, and they accept that responsibility to improve their speech, just by saying, and that's the same strategy that I used earlier for a mom of a late talking child who started talking and they can't understand. You need to consistently remind your nephews when you can't understand their speech clearly. And you also need to remind them and explain to them why it's important for them to have clear speech, because if they have important messages to communicate, they need to be using clear speech in order for people to take them seriously, to understand them, to believe that they know and they're smart. Because kids who don't try hard at talking better, kids who are, a lot of people say they're lazy, and it's not that they're lazy, it's that they haven't tried hard to improve. They just, which, you might want to call lazy, but I mean, it's all depending on, and they're getting their needs met and their communication is functional for them. So they don't see the need to work harder to improve it. But it's like if you gave a 6-year-old child a bicycle and you said, I want to give you this bicycle, they're going to be highly motivated to learn to ride a bicycle. And they are going to try to ride it every second they have, every second they get. They're going to try to ride it because they get benefit out of riding the bicycle. If you want a 6 or 10-year-old child to improve their speech articulation, it has to be equally as important for them to try hard at as it was for them to learn to ride the bicycle. And that's your challenge as a parent, because any kind of speech drill work or stuff that you try to do with them without them buying in 150%, they're not going to learn. The speech therapists dread these 6 to 10-year-old kids with articulation problems because they spend 3/4 of the time trying to get the kids to actually do some work. And they know that the kids haven't bought in because 1 or 2 speech sessions a week where kids are practicing sounds or saying words over and over and over will not functionally improve their speech intelligibility. But you can encourage them to try harder at better articulation by modeling very clear speech yourself and not calling your child out every time they're wrong, but giving them responsibility and offering them opportunities to use very clear speech. There are children in my program who came in talkers, talking a blue streak, but their parents couldn't understand anything they said. They used the same language facilitation strategies that the parents with nonverbal kids use. They use language facilitation talk, and they stop prompting and nagging their children to fix their talking. You have to use their motivation. So if your child loves space and their speech is terrible, you got to practice clear articulation talking experiences where your child is functionally talking about space. That's how you fix their articulation. So so not too late, but you have to do it the right way, or you will spin your wheels and spin your wheels and spin your wheels and spin your wheels. And there are a lot of kids who have been in a lot of 1 time a week speech therapy for years. The kids that are still in speech therapy at school and they're older than 1st grade or 2nd grade, they hardly ever make improvement unless parents are functionally facilitating speech communication at home. They have to be. All right, Sugi, I have stopped prompting, and recently, after your challenge, nowadays my son is using single words spontaneously to say or ask something. Is that okay? He's using single words. Of course it's okay. He's using single words. It's fabulous he's using single words. He wasn't using talking at all before, and you stopped prompting in 1 week. Suki, bravo. Congratulations to Suki. Everybody give her a thumbs up because you did it. You learned how to shift what's going on in yourself. Now, children are going to start to say single words, and your job now, Sugi, is to continue with those strategies and facilitate the natural talking. Start watching my videos about that one about facilitating conversational speech. Now that you've stopped the prompting, you got to continue those strategies, but you also must facilitate all the speech that moves on. This is the first phase. Like your child's broken the barrier of prompt dependence, and that usually happens in the first week. So bravo, Sugi. Great for you. Noor says, my son is 3 years old. I talk to him with our first language and his brother talks to him in English. Will this make him confused? No, it's not going to make him confused. Just the rule about multi-language learning for late talking children is they have to learn their first spoken language first. You facilitate one language. Mom and dad should facilitate one language together. And as soon as the child starts talking spontaneously, they don't have to be proficient. But if they get to like what Sugi is saying, her boy is saying single words spontaneously to ask something or label something. When kids start saying words on their own in the first language, then it's okay to facilitate 2 languages. But the rule is only one language at a time. You never mix languages, and you should only, the mom, the primary language facilitator, should speak one language for one whole activity. So your whole bath time or your whole dressing time. Don't switch back and forth between your 2 languages while you are facilitating language. Facilitate only one at a time. Spontaneously, you're going to use both languages. But for your targeted time and you pick in your day that you're going to facilitate language during your dressing, eating, driving in the car, whatever you do, this is when you speak only one language. Children, absolutely late talkers all over the world in my program are speaking 2 and sometimes 3 languages. It all depends on their parents. I have many kids whose parents speak different languages. Mom speaks one language, dad speaks the other. That's okay as long as both parents speak the same language for the first just couple weeks. It only takes a couple weeks for kids to make this shift. Like Sugi's child did it in 1 week. Now it's okay for her to speak both languages, but she may only speak one language at a time so she doesn't confuse her child. If different people, so what happens is it's like if you are bilingual and you speak to your girlfriend who speaks English and you speak to your mom who speaks Hindi or Urdu or whatever they speak, then you change how you talk when you talk to those people. You talk in English. You think in English when you talk to the English-speaking person. You think in whatever other language when you speak to the other person. You change how you talk. And that's why it's important for you as a language facilitator to be thinking in one language at a time when you're facilitating language for your child to imitate. So they see exactly how one language works, because every language works a little different. The word order is different, all that stuff, right? Let's see. My 7-year-old son is nonverbal, can't say even a word. Is he eligible for your independent training program? He cries when he can't communicate. I feel helpless as I can't understand him. Please help. So my only question is about the independent study at all, is how much support do you think you will need? in the process. The independent study course is a series of videos. They're not live videos, all of them. They're slideshow videos. So there's notes, there's worksheets, there's assignments. You are trained to make your own plan. You're trained to do your own analysis. But here is the thing. The parents who work with me like the fact that I'm intuitive and I'm experienced, and I can call them out on everything that they're doing that's great, and I can call them out on everything that they're doing that's blocking their child's communication. That's my skill. That's my talent. If you take the independent study course, the $500 course, you are charged with doing that yourself. Now, all parents are intuitive, especially when they communicate with their child. But you also have to be honest with your own self-analysis. So like I said, when people say, I'm asking my child yes or no questions and I'm telling them that they need to swap up their stuff, that's the kind of thing that I do, right? In my program, I explain exactly what to do. I don't tell you what to stop doing. I tell you what to do. It's up to you to independently decide to make your own shift and give up those prompting and teaching your child to memorize words. It also is responsible for you as a parent to shift your mindset and give up your worry and trust this process. Because unless you trust the natural language evolution process, you aren't allowing your child's speech to come out on their own. You're always still at some level taking responsibility for your kids talking. And you can't do that. Nobody can take responsibility for communicating what is in someone else's mind. And you need to teach your child that skill. And the only one who can teach them is you. So that's the deal. If you feel like you can listen to my talking, read English text, follow along with the strategies that I give you, then you can excel in the independent study program. If you feel like you need more handholding, if you're really, really stuck in mindset and worry and you need me week after week to remind you and help you and do that, I have programs that allow for that level of support. Because there are parents who understand that they can't do it on their own. They know that they won't be honest with themselves and they need somebody else to gently guide them and remind them to fix their stuff. Because the reason everyone who's watching this video now, there are reasons that your child is stuck in nonverbal communication patterns that weren't necessarily your fault. Your child did this to you. Your child taught you to understand them. You went along because you got to understand your child. Your brilliant child is the one that taught you to be stuck. You've got to help them change their mindset, and it's really challenging to change a child's mind. The trick is to keep it fun. If it isn't fun, it isn't fun. And you can learn all about how to do that in my programs. So that's my advice. If you are considering the independent study program, the main consideration is not the program. It's you. All the information is in the program. Everything is there. Everything you need is there. The real thing you have to decide is if you are ready to independently take it on or if you need support. Now, if you just need a little support to get you over the hump, like, remind you about it and get it started, and then you feel like you're good and you can change your mindset, then the starter program gets you started. And I don't hold your hand the whole way, but it does give you enough support to really get you on the right path. And that's what a lot of people consider too. So you have to look at the level that you need support to decide which program that you want to enroll in. Don't have financial resources to work with me? Still watch the free intro class because it's free and it does provide good information to help you learn about language facilitation, what typical speech development looks like, all of that. And there are people watching my video today who are not paying me and they are getting their kids talking. You can do it too. The people who work with me are the people who need support. And that's what I'm here for. But I'm also here to help everybody else the best I can on these live videos. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate your attention today and your language facilitation work with your kids. And I'll see you all in my next video.